Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. I started a series a little bit before ladder, going over bases, item bases, and I did a couple episodes before ladder hit, and I was unable to really keep up with it. But I want to continue with that series, and today we're going to be continuing with mercenary weapon bases. So this is not going to be confused with like player items. So if you're trying to make yourself a particularly sweet item in one of these bases, for a player, it's a completely different story. Today we're going to be talking about mercenary bases and why specific mercenary bases are better than others, the differences between spears and pole arms, also the maximum number of sockets that each pole arm has, and why you would choose one or the other for a specific rune word. Now, the first thing that we need to cover is the number of sockets for each individual item. So going over the pole arms first, the Colossus Voulge has a maximum number of sockets of 4. The Cryptic Axe has a maximum number of sockets of 5. The Giant Thresher has a maximum number of sockets of 6. So does the Great Poleaxe with a max sockets of 6. And the Ogre Axe only has a maximum sockets of 3. The Thresher, which is the kind of like the favorite, easy favorite, has 5 sockets as its max. For the spears, we have the Ghost Spear, which is 6 sockets max. We have the Hyperion Spear, which is 3 sockets max. Mancatcher is 5 sockets max. Stygian Pike is 4 sockets max. And finally, the War Pike is 6 sockets max. Now, each one of these has a specific advantage over the others. The problem is, however, is that mercenaries cannot take advantage of some of these advantages. You might be asking, well, what are the advantages? Well, first off, let's go over the Great Poleaxe and the Giant Thresher. These two weapons have a very specific advantage over the other weapons that a lot of the other weapons, just simply don't have. And what is that advantage? Well, they are very long range polearms. The Great Poleaxe is a range modifier 4, which is the highest modifier in the entire game. And the Giant Thresher, which is the other very nice polearm, is a range modifier 4 as well. This means that these weapons are extremely long-ranged weapons, and if in the hands of a player, would give you a significant advantage over, other players or monsters, because you would be able to attack from further away. However, mercenaries do not take advantage of this range modifier. Mercenaries have a static range of 2.5. Or actually, it might even be 1.5. I can't remember exactly, but it's not very good. And it doesn't matter whether you put a max range polearm on them or a minimum range polearm like the Thresher. The Thresher is a range 1 polearm. This one has the worst range out of all of the items in the game. Now, the weapons are generally balanced around couple different mechanics. They are balanced around range. That's one of the mechanics that they are balanced around. They are also balanced around speed. And if we were to arrange these weapons by speed, as far as the pole arms are concerned, we would have to arrange them like this. It would be the Thresher first. Then it would be the Giant Thresher second. They actually are tied at -10. They're both the same speed. They do have different sockets, though. And then after that would be the Great Poleaxe, which is a 0 speed. That means it is neither particularly fast, nor is it particularly slow. And the Ogre Axe is also a 0 speed polearm. The Cryptic Axe is a +10, which means it is slower, much slower than, for instance, the Thresher. It is 20 speed slower. And the Colossus Voulge is also a 10. So in that order, that is the speed. As for the spears, they also have speed modifiers as well. And the Mancatcher is most definitely the fastest of the lot at a -20, which is extremely fast and is much faster than the Thresher at -10. Now, the problem with this, though, is that the Mancatcher is a spear. And there are certain recipes that do not work in spears. There are also certain recipes that do not work in polearms. So if you are trying to make a very specific recipe, like Insight, then a 4-socket Mancatcher will not work for an Insight because Insight does not work in Spears. It does, however, work in Polearms, so a 5-socket Thresher or a 5-socket Giant Thresher would be the fastest base. The Mancatcher is -20, and the next fastest one on the list is the Hyperion Spear at -10. And then after that, we've got a bunch of really slow ones. The Stygian Pike is actually the second fastest here with a 0. And then we also have the Ghost Spear, which is a 0. And then finally, the War Pike is actually a +20, which makes it far slower than even the Colossus Voulge at +10. However, there is also a damage difference between these. So the War Pike and the Colossus Voulge are the hardest hitting of all of the weapons. The War Pike, of course, has 6 sockets and can be something like Breath of the Dying, whereas the Colossus Voulge only has 4 and can only be used for Crescent Moon and Insight and perhaps even a Infinity if you'd like to. These weapons, when they're arranged by speed, you really kind of understand how well they work. Now, which one would you choose for a mercenary? Well, there's other considerations besides speed and the number of sockets, and then it comes down to, well, what about the requirements? So the Colossus Voulge has a strength requirement of 200. This makes it, even in its ethereal form, which is 10 less than the non-ethereal form, by the way, of 210, the Colossus Voulge is generally unusable by most mercenaries until the mercenary gets to a high enough level, or if you have a very nice plus strength piece of equipment like Andariel's Visage, which honestly, for the most part, takes the Colossus Voulge out of the equation for most players because their mercenary won't even be able to put it on. If you notice, though, there's not a lot of that going on in the polearms. They generally have pretty decent requirements. The Ogre Axe does have a particularly high strength requirement of 185, but it's nowhere near as much as the 200 on the Colossus Voulge. The problem with the Ogre Axe, though, is that it only has 3 sockets. So the only recipe that you can really put in here that's any worth is a Crescent Moon. Crescent Moon is actually a surprisingly good rune word for mercenaries because of the static field spam. A lot of these are very difficult to obtain because they have higher sockets, and this is the reason why people like to use the Colossus Voulge, because it is a max socket 4 item, which means that you could just take it to Larzik if you find an ethereal Colossus Voulge. You take it to Larzik, he will put 4 sockets in it, just like that. Whereas if you were to take a Great Poleaxe Eth, a Giant Thresher Eth, a Thresher Eth, or a Cryptic Axe Eth, or any of these items that are not 4 sockets max, to Larzik, they're going to get their maximum number of sockets, which is either a good or a bad thing, depending on what you're looking for. Obedience is a very excellent, very, very excellent rune word, very cheap rune word that only requires Co and Foul. And the 5-socket Thresher, the 5-socket Mancatcher, and the 5-socket Cryptic Axe are actually really good for those because they max socket out at 4. So if you find a very nice superior Mancatcher or a superior Cryptic Axe or a superior Thresher with decent and enhanced damage, then you can just take it to Larzik, socket it, and get yourself an Obedience relatively quickly. The High Crushing Blow on Obedience is absolutely excellent, and they recently opened up Obedience so it can be made in Spears, which means that you can make it in the extremely fast Mancatcher base, and an Obedience Mancatcher is insane. Now, unfortunately, you cannot make Insight in any of the Spear bases. However, one thing that you can make in the Spear bases is Infinity. Pride and Obedience. Those are 3 rune words that were recently opened up for Spears, and when they opened up those 3 for Spears, they actually made it so that, honestly, Mancatcher was better than the alternative choices of Thresher and Giant Thresher. In fact, if we were to just take these and arrange them by, like, how do I put this? Popularity, I guess, or like the best bases for, say, Infinity or any particular rune word at any time, Mancatcher has definitely taken over. So if the rune word is capable of being made in a Mancatcher, Mancatcher is the fastest base, and it definitely does allow for the mercenary to really wreck shop. You have to understand that things like Infinity and Obedience have Crushing Blow on them, and the faster that your mercenary can attack, the faster he can apply Crushing Blow. And having a negative 20 base to start with means that he's going to be attacking exceptionally fast, and you need less equipment to speed him up and make him attack faster. Next on the list would be the Thresher and the Giant Thresher, which are both very good choices. They're actually pretty much equivalent to each other. The Thresher actually has a little bit higher top-end damage, whereas the Giant Thresher has a little bit higher min damage. But overall, they're still pretty much the same. If you end up with a superior Giant Thresher or a superior, an Eth superior Giant Thresher, an Eth superior Thresher, or an Eth superior Mancatcher, with the right number of sockets, it can be an absolutely excellent ally for your mercenaries. Next on the list is undoubtedly the Cryptic Axe, which I believe is one of the more popular weapons. It's not particularly very fast, but it does hit very nice and hard. And as you can see, it has higher damage than the Thresher and the Giant Thresher. However, the Cryptic Axe does tend to require a little bit more attack speed to make up for the fact that it is, not as fast as the alternatives. And then comes the great Poleaxe, like somewhere in between. It's not exactly the greatest base, and it's not exactly the worst base. If you can find it with the right number of sockets, and because it has 6 sockets max, it's a little bit difficult because there's no real good 6-socket rune word that people are making in polearms for the most part. I mean, you can make, obviously, a Breath of the Dying, but not everybody has Zods to sling around, so Breath of the Dying is kind of out of the question. Although Breath of the Dying is a very fast rune word, and if you were to find a very nice, great Poleaxe and you wanted to put Breath of the Dying in there, you certainly could. Colossus Voulge definitely is probably next to last on the list because the damage on it isn't really that much greater than some of the other choices. I mean, if you compare the Colossus Voulge at 25 to 247 to the Thresher at 18 to 211, it's not really that far off from the Thresher's damage output, and it's much, much slower. Which makes the Colossus Voulge, in my opinion, one of the poorest choices for a Merc weapon over all the others. On top of that, because it's so slow, you end up needing a lot more increased attack speed to bring that mercenary to his highest breakpoint so that he is attacking fast enough to be worthwhile. The reason why people use the Colossus Voulge, honestly, is just simply because it's a 4-socket item, and they can take it to Larzik and put 4 sockets in it. So all they have to do is find an Eth Colossus Voulge. They don't have to find, an Eth Giant Thresher with the right number of sockets. They just find an Eth Colossus Voulge, take it to Larzik, socket it, and then they have their Eth item, and then they work on trying to find a better one later. The Ogre Axe is definitely the least of the polearms, and quite honestly, just not really good enough, in my opinion, to really warrant making a rune word in it. The only rune word that you can even make, by the way, is Crescent Moon. So if you were to find an Eth Ogre Axe with, the right number of sockets, which is 3, in that case, you could throw a Crescent Moon in there and do fine with it. But quite honestly, I just don't really think the Ogre Axe makes the best choice. Because it's a 0-speed polearm, it's not as fast as the Thresher, it's not as fast as the Giant Thresher. And it also doesn't really have a lot of other advantages going on, but with it, it's just a poor man's choice, unless you're specifically going for a Crescent Moon. And even then, I would probably still prefer Crescent Moon in a Thresher, a Giant Thresher, a Cryptic Axe, over the Ogre Axe. The Ogre Axe also has a pretty high strength requirement, which at 185, which isn't as bad as the Colossus Voulge, but it's still bad enough that you may still not be able to equip this to your mercenary. And then let's go to the spears. So let's talk about the spears real quick and which ones are the best here. So the Mancatcher is undoubtedly the fastest and quite honestly the best base for the spears. So if you are making an Obedience, a Infinity, or a Pride, and you want to go with a spear base, the Mancatcher is undoubtedly the best base for that. We also have the Hyperion Spear, which is only capable of being made as a Crescent Moon, so that one pretty much goes to the end. The War Pike is extremely slow and is right there next to the Hyperion Spear. And the Stygian Pike, although it is decent, It doesn't really have a lot of good things to it, so it's kind of like a dead center. You can't make insight in it, and you probably wouldn't want to make your infinity in it, and it's only capable of 4 sockets, so it's kind of just out completely, and this is unfortunate. So if we're going to arrange these by their quality, I mean, there's really not a lot of rune words that you would even make in a Stygian Pike, let alone would you sacrifice, your infinity base like for that. So like what you're looking for with an infinity base is something that is extremely good. You don't want to waste your runes on a crappy, infinity base. So what you're looking for is something that is going to be worth the runes that you're putting into it. So you definitely want to look for the Mancatcher, the Mancatcher, the Thresher, or the Giant Thresher as your infinity base. Whereas the Stygian Pike can host some rune words, but it can't host any, honestly, that are really worth your time. It's not capable of obedience, which is a 5-socket rune word. It is not really good for infinity, which is the 4-socket rune word that you might put in there. Pride, which is 4 sockets, Cham, Sir, Io, Low, is probably going to be better put in the Mancatcher, in my opinion, especially since it has a Cham, a Sir, and a Low in it. Again, it's a similar situation to the infinity. You don't want to waste your runes in something that would be considered a crappy base. And then the last rune word that you could possibly put in here would be, let's say it's Pride, Obedience, Infinity. I don't think Crescent Moon works in a spear. Could be wrong. Let me double check here real quick. No. So Crescent Moon doesn't work in a spear either, which pretty much rules out Stygian Pike for just about any purposes, really. You wouldn't really want to make any rune words in it. The Hyperion Spear also, similarly, there's pretty much no good rune words for the Hyperion Spear or the Stygian Pike. Now, the War Pike is an interesting choice because it's such a high damage choice. It's 49 to 267, but it's also extremely slow, which is a big detriment to it. The Ghost Spear is much faster and has similar damage output to the War Pike, and in my opinion, the Ghost Spear is actually a pretty good base since it is a 0 speed. With particularly high damage versus the War Pike, which doesn't even have really that much more damage, and it's a 20 speed, so it's way, way, way slower. So if you were going to go with a high damage output polearm as opposed to a fast polearm, the Ghost Spear, spear, my bad, not polearm. If you're going to go with a high damage spear instead of a low damage, fast spear, you definitely wouldn't want to pick the War Pike, in my opinion. You would just want to pick the Ghost Spear, because the Ghost Spear is 20 faster on its speed for very minimal difference in damage output, whereas the Mancatcher is even faster and has obviously much lower damage output. As you can see, it's 63 to 138 versus 49 to 267, so a much higher top end on the War Pike. However, the Mancatcher is negative 20, and the War Pike is positive 20, which is a 40 speed difference between the two for that extra damage. Whereas the Ghost Spear is a 0 speed base, and it still has very similar damage to the War Pike. However, it is only 20 away from the Mancatcher, and the Ghost Spear actually makes a surprisingly good choice. The same thing when it goes for the polearms. You have some interesting choices as far as speed versus damage output, and in my opinion, if you're going speed versus damage output, it really comes down to the Thresher versus the Cryptic Axe. Those are your two big money makers there. The Thresher is the speed variant, and the Cryptic Axe is the damage variant. The Thresher just kind of like, the Giant Thresher is just kind of like somewhere in between. Like, it's not necessarily as good of damage as the Thresher, but it does have a higher bottom end, which means more minimum damage, and it's not as good damage as the Cryptic Axe, but neither is the Cryptic Axe as fast as the Giant Thresher. So each one of these is honestly good in their own right. The reason why the Thresher works so good on the mercenaries is because of that range thing that we talked about earlier. Because the Thresher is balanced around the idea that it is a one range polearm, And the mercenary doesn't care. The mercenary still uses it as if it is a 2.5 range polearm. So he is getting the benefit of the balance equation away from the range, and then he still gets to have his range. You know, he has his cake and he eats it too, which is why the Thresher is such a good choice for mercenaries. And that's why you'll see everybody picking up all the Threshers and checking them to see if, number one, they're ethereal, and number two, whether they are the right number of sockets that they want. However, keep in mind that if you find an ethereal polearm that is 3 sockets, 4 sockets, or 5 sockets, you have something good. All right? Just because it's not the number of sockets that you want doesn't mean it's not a good polearm base. Crescent Moon polearms in Eth bases are extremely good. Infinity in 4-socket Eth bases and Insight in 4-socket Eth bases, all very good. Pride doesn't really matter all that much because there's no damage on Pride anyway. But having it in an Eth base will at least give you some kind of damage. Obedience is absolutely amazing in fast polearms. Specifically, things like Thresher and Mancatcher are your 2 best bases for Obedience. Your best bases for Infinity is most definitely, again, Mancatcher, Thresher, and Giant Thresher. These are your best Infinity bases because Infinity has a large amount of crushing blow on it, which definitely helps out with the speed variation. So the faster your weapon is, the faster your monster is applying that crushing blow to the target. If you're talking about something like Obedience, same thing. Obedience is absolutely amazing in a Mancatcher, a Thresher, or a Giant Thresher. The 3 best bases, honestly, for those items. If we're talking about Crescent Moon is best made in either a Thresher at 3 sockets, or a Giant Thresher at 3 sockets, again, because of the speed. You cannot make Crescent Moon in Spears, so Mancatcher is out. And Insight does not have Crushing Blow, but it does have crit and rather high damage. And you can make an Insight in an Cryptic Axe, which is actually a surprisingly good choice due to its higher damage output. A Thresher will work. It's not necessarily the best choice for an Insight, because really when it comes to Insight, instead of focusing on the Crushing Blow and which is going to do a pretty massive amount of damage, now you're focusing on Deadly Strike, which Insight has a +6 max roll on critical strike, which will give your mercenary a rather high amount of damage output. So the higher damage output weapons, like the Cryptic Axe, will do better in this situation. The Ogre Axe is, of course, outright because it's not capable of 4 sockets. The CV is a decent choice, again, because it has rather high physical damage. However, your mercenary has to have the strength to actually put it on. And the Great Poleaxe is like somewhere in between. It is unfortunately balanced around that maximum range, and so its damage is a little bit lower than it probably should be for its speed, and that's specifically because it's a 6-range polearm. And if the mercenary could take advantage of the range, it would be a great choice. But as it is right now, it's sort of like a middling choice, somewhere in between the Thresher and the Ogre Axe, which you can't even use for this particular rune word. Quite honestly, when it comes to these ethereal polearms, there's just so many good choices. There's, it really comes down to, number one, what rune word are you trying to put in there? Number two, does the rune word have Crushing Blow on it? Because if it does have Crushing Blow, or you're trying to take advantage of Crushing Blow, the faster rune words are generally the better rune words for this. Number three, the maximum number of sockets on the item. So obviously you can't take advantage of something like the Ogre Axe or the Hyperion Spear for pretty much anything except for 3-socket rune words, and there's no 3-socket rune words to put into the Hyperion Spear. So the Ogre Axe becomes literally only usable in Crescent Moon. The 4-socket rune words bases like the Stygian Pike and the Colossus Voulge can pretty much only be used for 4-socket rune words. So you're stuck with either a Infinity, a Insight, or a Pride, and this one can only make Infinity and Pride. It cannot make Insight, which is not really that useful. And then your 5 sockets, of course, can make things like obedience, which is absolutely excellent. And quite honestly, a lot of people sleep on obedience, but obedience is one of, if not the best, easy to make rune words for mercenaries, like bar none. I can't really talk obedience up enough. Obedience not only has a high amount of crushing blow, which will allow your mercenary to absolutely demolish, it also has a high amount of faster hit recovery, which, if you guys are unaware, Act 2 mercenaries have the worst freaking faster hit recovery breakpoints, equivalent to a sorceress. If you've ever played a sorceress and you've gotten stuck in a faster hit recovery loop and died, you know what I'm talking about. Sorceresses have absolutely garbage faster hit recovery breakpoints. And the Act 2 mercenary has identical breakpoints to the sorceress. So that means that faster hit recovery is paramount to keeping your mercenary alive. And obedience has, what, 55% faster hit recovery on it, which is more than enough to help. So obedience is one of those sleeper rune words that a lot of people don't think about. I mean, they're so excited to get that insight, but then the insight doesn't keep their mercenary alive because their mercenary doesn't have the right, gear to actually survive. So the insight is worthless to them. However, and I know I was highlighting the Stygian Pike, which can't even have an insight in it. But the thing is that obedience, number one, is extremely cheap at a foul and a co. And it will actually keep your mercenary alive. The 55% faster hit recovery combined with the crushing blow, combined with a nice fast weapon like a Mancatcher or a Thresher, will allow your mercenary to just smack really hard. He literally will kill bosses for you with this particular item. And literally all you have to do once you put an obedience on your Merc is just give him a nice lifesteal helmet and let him go about his business. And usually he will keep himself alive at this point. If you're running things like slow polearms, you're going to need more attack speed. So things like the Cryptic Axe, the Colossus Voulge, the Great Poleaxe, the War Pike, the Ghost Spear, all of these are particularly slow bases. Some of them slower than others, like the War Pike. If you make a rune word in these bases for your mercenary, you're going to need more attack speed to basically fix the how slowly he is going to hit his targets. And that's one of the reasons why with these bases people tend to avoid them, because then they have to stack on things like Treachery and Dariel's Visage, maybe socketed with a 15% IS jewel, just to get them up to the attack speed that that they need to be at. Whereas when you put one of the faster bases on them, like for instance if you were to put a Thresher, a Giant Thresher, a Mancatcher, or even I think the Hyperion Spear, which Hyperion Spear is max sockets 3, which unfortunately doesn't really make it that great of a choice for just about anything. So it really comes down to these 3 right here, which is if you put a Mancatcher, a Giant Thresher, or a Thresher on your mercenary, they're very fast bases, and you don't need as much increased attack speed to bring them up to par. And that's one of the reasons why these are so sought after. And ever since the patch where they enabled Infinity, Pride, and Obedience to be made in spears, Mancatcher has become one of the best, if not the best, choices for an Infinity base, as well as the best choice for an Obedience base as well. So keep your eyes out for those beautiful, beautiful ethereal Mancatchers and try to roll them if you can. Now do keep in mind that if you find a superior of any of these, the superior can only be Larzicked. So superiors cannot be rolled in the cube with the recipe. There is a recipe that allows you to roll pole arms in the cube and try to get sockets. But if you find a superior version of any of these, remember that it only will obtain the maximum number of sockets from Larzick. You cannot roll it in the cube. So the Great Poleaxe is 6, the Ghost Spear is 6, the Colossus Voulge is 4, the Mancatcher is 5, the Giant Thresher is 6, the Thresher is 5, the Stygian Pike is 4, the War Pike is 6, the Cryptic Axe is 5, the Hyperion Spear is 3, and the Ogre Axe is 3. And using this to your advantage, you can get polearms that will be very nice to you. For instance, like say you were running along and a superior Thresher dropped on the ground, and you're like, wow, a superior Thresher, and you're like, and you pick it up, and you see that it's ethereal, and you're like, wow, an ethereal superior Thresher with 15% enhanced defense, damage. Wow, this is amazing, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this to Larzik, which is the only thing you can do, and he's going to give it 5 sockets. And don't get disappointed because that this is how the system works. So you're never going to get 4 or 3 sockets from Larzik. And you can't roll it in the cube, but you can get 5, which makes an ethereal superior Thresher a very good base for a obedience. The same thing goes for the ethereal Colossus Voulge. If you were to find a 15% enhanced Colossus Voulge, you'd get Larzik, it would be 4 sockets, which makes it a decent base for a Insight, a Infinity, if you want to go that route with the slow polearm. It could also be a pretty decent base for a Pride as well. And using this knowledge of the maximum number of sockets on all these items, you can figure out, ways to finagle yourself a decent Merc weapon. And, if your Merc has garbage on him, like anything is better than garbage. So, like, even if you were to find something like an Eth Colossus Voulge and your Merc has garbage on it, and you don't necessarily want an Eth Colossus Voulge, I mean, at the very least, if he can wield it, it's going to be better than probably whatever garbage he's got on until you find something better. There's really not a lot more to go over with this. I don't really know what else to show you guys. If I take a look at some of my online characters, I could show you what weapons those mercenaries are wielding, and that might be a good place to go from here. The video has already been pretty long, but I would like to at least show you some examples of various items that what they look like when they're made in specific bases. All right, so we might as well start with my current ladder character, which is Frostbite, and she is currently using an Insight in a Eth Superior Thresher that I found. I was lucky enough to find myself a Superior Superior Thresher with a decent amount of enhanced damage, by the way, that already had 4 sockets in it. It was just serendipitous, so I went ahead and made my Insight in this. Now, Insights, of course, have various rolls on them. They roll with the meditation, and they also roll the critical strike as well as the enhanced damage. Now, mine rolled rather low on the critical strike, which is unfortunate, but rather high on the meditation aura, which is very nice. I'm also going to show you one of my characters that has an obedience as well. And I've got so many different characters. I'm going to pause this and see if I can find them and bring it up. All right, and here's another mercenary that I have who's utilizing an obedience in a Cryptic axe. As you can see, very nice damage numbers. 234 to 1077, which is pretty darn sweet. And that 40% crushing blow on obedience is just amazing. On top of the fact it has the enchant when you kill an enemy, which increases its attack rating. And as I said, the 40% faster recovery, I was wrong on that. Which 40% faster recovery is still an amazing amount for a mercenary, which helps him out tremendously. Pairing up an Eth Obedience with something like Andoriel's Visage or something that's going to increase his attack speed, like a Treachery, is absolutely excellent and increases his damage exponentially. And obviously that 40% crushing blow is really the real winner here with Obedience, because not only does it give him the ability to take out bosses and things like that, it's just amazing DPS output. And as you can see with Obedience, not only does it have 40% faster hit recovery, all resistances, and quite honestly, just really nice damage. It's going to help keep your mercenary alive really well. Accidentally hit the space bar and opened up the intro. Next. All right, and here is an Infinity and a Giant Thresher. As you can see, Infinity also has 40% crushing blow, which is one of the things that makes Infinity so powerful on a mercenary. In combination, of course, with the Conviction Aura, which, much like the Enchant on the Obedience, allows the mercenary to bypass most of the defense of targets, which is definitely extremely useful. Now, the reason why you choose Infinity is obviously for yourself. You want that Conviction Aura on yourself. But honestly, for a mercenary specifically, if we're talking about how well it works on a Merc, Infinity is just kind of amazing for a mercenary. The Conviction Aura, like I said, brings down the defense of all the monsters around them, allowing them to hit pretty much anything. The Crushing Blow allows them to apply a pretty amazing amount of damage to the target, much the same way that Obedience does, although it is lacking the, unfortunately, the the faster hit recovery that Obedience has. The Vitality also doesn't work on the Mercenary, which is rather unfortunate because, well, Mercenaries don't have Vitality. They just have Strength and Dex. So it doesn't do anything for them at all. The Magic Find does work on them as long as they're the ones that get the killing blow. And quite honestly, even the level 20 Chain Lightning is going to proc a whole lot. And the negative 55% enemy lightning resistance is going to help out that Chain Lightning. Now keep in mind the negative 55% enemy lightning resistance only applies to the Merc, not to you. You have to actually be wielding it yourself if you want that effect. And that's where things get a little hairy. This isn't even actually an ethereal base. This is a non-ethereal base. So this is actually less damage than what it would be in an Eth base. Do I have an Eth version around here somewhere? Looks like I do not at this particular time. All in all, though, when it comes to these particular weapons, you know, choosing the right base can have a pretty profound impact on how well your mercenary does. Because Act 2 mercs, you know, rely on their weapon to dish out damage as well as steal life back. And if they are not equipped properly, your Act 2 mercenary is just going to die over and over again. I hope that I've given you a little bit of insight as far as mercenary polearms in this video. I know it's been a particularly long video, but I was going over both spears and polearms in this video and talking about the pros and cons between all of them. But, you know, if there's anything that you want to take away from this, a too long didn't read, so to speak, it's that Mancatcher, Giant Thresher, and Thresher are really the three winners of this category, with Cryptic Axe following close behind. But quite honestly, Cryptic Axe, while it is a good choice for high damage output, it's not a good choice for speed. And pretty much all the other polearms, including the Colossus Voulge, are kind of poor choices in general. Just simply because, well, they just don't really kind of fit as well into the way the characters work. Now, granted, if you're trying to go for a high DPS output and you don't have Crushing Blow on your Mercenary, the Colossus Voulge or the War Pike could be interesting choices, or even the Ghost Spear. But the problem with the high damage, low speed polearms is that you have to sacrifice a lot of equipment to bring the speed up to a point where they're useful. And in the process of sacrificing equipment to bring their speed up, you are, of course, bringing their damage down. For instance, if I was to put a Treachery on Merc to bring his speed up with a Colossus Voulge, well, then I'm losing the damage output from something like Fortitude. So he's no longer, you know, getting that, like, massive damage bump from a Fortitude. Instead, he has to go with something that isn't going to increase his speed faster. Same thing with Andoriel's Visage. If I were to put an Andoriel's Visage on him to allow him to utilize Colossus Voulge, it does have a little bit of attack speed on it, but I might have to put a more attack speed in the helmet to help him reach that breakpoint. Whereas if he's using a faster weapon, like a Mancatcher or a Thresher, or a Giant Thresher, you know, he might not necessarily need an IS Jewel in there, and I can instead put something like a 40% enhanced damage, or maybe a max damage tool or something like that to increase his DPS output a little bit more. And it really comes down to the weapon sort of dictates, you know, what equipment that you can put on your Merc to, you know, increase his output. It's also important to note that Prevent Monster Heal doesn't work on mercenaries, so Open Wounds comes in very handy, and a lot of the times people sleep on that. They don't put Open Wounds on their mercenary, and so their mercenary is not applying that very nice negative, you know, regeneration canceling effect. And this also comes into play. If you're focusing on trying to increase the speed of your mercenary, then you don't have a lot of room to put on other pieces of equipment like Duress, which has Crushing Blow and Open Wounds. Or, you know, putting on something like Obedience, which has Crushing Blow but no Open Wounds, and you want to tack on some more Open Wounds in there. Well, if you have a relatively slow polearm, you might be, you know, more inclined to put a Treachery on your Merc as opposed to something like a Duress. And gets a little complicated. This video has been going on for too long already, though, so if you have any questions, some more advanced questions on these particular choices, feel free to ask them down in the comments. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and keep watching.